Welcome back. We're going to talk about Mark Drakeford. He is the the leader of the Welsh Assembly. He runs Wales with a rod of iron. Many Welsh people will remember his rule during the pandemic. His lockdown tyranny was a sight to see. Anyway, he's full of socialist self-righteousness. He's really, really saintly and gets very annoyed about Tories because they don't agree with him. Let's have a listen. Let's have a look at the extraordinary Mr. Drakeford in action in the Welsh Assembly yesterday.
It is shocking. It is absolutely shocking to me that you think that you can turn up here this afternoon with a mess that your party has made to the budget of this country, to the reputation of this country around the world, that you promise those people that there will be more to come, and you think you turn up here this afternoon and claim some sort of moral high ground? What sort of world do you belong in?
Calm down, dear. Yes, that was a rant directed at a Tory representative in the Welsh Assembly, Andrew R.T. Davies, who sat there laughing at him, and we're laughing at him now. I'm joined now by Welsh political consultant and commentator Matthew MacKinnon. Matthew, extraordinary.
Absolutely extraordinary. I mean, firstly, isn't it great that the First Minister's Questions is actually getting some coverage for once?
Yeah.
Because, most people don't even realise this sort of thing happens on a weekly basis in the Welsh Parliament. But I think we need to be worried here because what Mark Drakeford's done is divert completely away from his failures as a First Minister. 1 in 4 people in Wales are on an NHS waiting list. Extraordinary figures. He is a First Minister whose government has actually voted to cut the NHS budget. And he's going on a tirade and shouting at Andrew R.T. Davies, who did very, very well to get under his skin and really expose him. And he won't actually deal with the problems Wales are facing. He'd rather just shout in the chamber, and he's getting irate because he knows he's finally being exposed on the way he runs Wales.
Yes, Andrew R.T. Davies, a good bit of politics on his part. If you get your opponent to lose their rag like that, you just won. So Drakeford is probably no doubt pleased with himself because he looks so righteous and saintly in that nonsensical rant. But he made a fool of himself, didn't he?
He did to an extent, and a lot of the Conservatives are seeing this as a good win. But I've also seen on social media a lot of young people, tweeting it, go on Drakey, give them hell. I think a lot of people are so used to Mark Drakeford in second gear. The fact he's finally geared up and gone into third and fourth and fifth, for some people, it's something they've been wanting to see for a long time. But I don't think really it'll help him in the long term. I think he should have more respect for the Welsh Parliament and the other members that are elected there.
What is it with Wales? I get it. Wales has a natural left-leaning inclination. That's what the people of Wales are like. I mean, it's a great working-class country, where all the miners lived, and the steel workers, etc., etc. I get that. But it seemed to me during the pandemic that Mark Drakeford put them through lockdown hell. I mean, do you remember when he decided that if you bought magazines or books, that would somehow cause COVID to spread? And you went into newsagents, there were a great sort of police-type tape banning you from buying. But the man went mad during that period, didn't he?
He did, and now he's refusing to have a COVID inquiry. Scotland and Wales are having a COVID inquiry on how they handled the whole process. And Mark Drakeford's completely refusing to have any sort of inquiry. He wants to have a British inquiry led by the Tories in England. So he wants the devolved powers to make the decisions, but no scrutiny. So I think this is where the whole situation gets a bit bizarre. He doesn't actually want to be scrutinised in any way, shape or form. But it was a crazy situation. I remember in Wales, they were trying to bring COVID passes, and myself and many other campaigners in Wales were pushing back and fighting against it. And the Conservatives did oppose them, but, Plaid Cymru and Labour voted it through with the support of the Lib Dems. So, we need to be really careful that people like him don't get a whiff of power again, because they've shown they'll use it if they can.
He's got too much power, though, hasn't he? I mean, almost total power. And that rant, this is a man, drunk on power, who doesn't accept that he can ever be challenged.
Wales is a one-party state, sadly. I mean, you mentioned how much a great country Wales is earlier. It's a very diverse country. The North East and South West are very, very different places to go if you visit them. The valleys are very different to Cardiff, and you've got the Mid-Wales farming and tourism industries that are very, very different. But it's quite a socially conservative country, Wales. But it is an ingrained culture there to vote Labour. We saw the Tories, in 2019 take the Red Wall in the North, but they took the Red Wall in the north of Wales, but they couldn't break into the valleys. So I think Drakeford knows that he's quite safe there, and he just relies on that heavy block vote to push through whatever he wants.
Yeah, and to go back to that rant, this was after Andrew R.T. Davies challenged him about the story of a grandfather from Merthyr Tydfil who was forced to wait 15 hours on his kitchen floor for an ambulance, during which he had no choice but to wet himself. And Mr. Davies demanded solutions from Mr. Drakeford to deal with the pressures on ambulance crews. But basically that deserves a sensible answer, not that kind of losing of his temper and screaming across the chamber. I mean, that's a decent question. Drakeford will not be challenged even on these issues.
No, and Andrew did very well to expose him there and make him sort of lose his rag. But I think, as you said, he was entitled to a proper answer. But this isn't new. These sorts of situations and scenarios have been happening in Wales for a long time. When I was a senior advisor in the Welsh Parliament for politicians there, we used to regularly see cases where someone had broken their hip on a rugby field and an ambulance wouldn't turn up for 7 or 8 hours. You know, these are incredible cases that just haven't been getting the media attention. If this sort of thing was happening in England, if England had 1 in 4 people on a waiting list, it would be front page of every newspaper and there'd be real scrutiny. But in Wales, the one-party state, where all the media leans left, all of the organisations lean left, there's no scrutiny on Drakeford.
Apparently, Matthew, we've had some of our listeners, viewers, missed Mr. Drakeford in full flow. So we're going to just play that again. So for those of you who didn't quite catch it, this is Mark Drakeford losing his rag in the Welsh Assembly yesterday.
It is shocking. It is absolutely shocking to me that you think that you can turn up here this afternoon with a mess that your party has made to the budget of this country, to the reputation of this country around the world, that you promise those people that there will be more to come, and you think you turn up here this afternoon and claim some sort of moral high ground? What sort of world do you belong in?
He's not claiming a moral high ground. He's asking why a grandfather had to wait 15 hours on his kitchen floor for an ambulance. Fair question.
Absolutely, and I think it goes back to the point that he has no answers to resolve the situations facing Wales. All he does is blame Tory austerity. All he does is blame the UK government. But in fact, he's been in charge of the NHS. The Labour Party have been in charge of the Welsh NHS since 1999. So they really need to get a grip of this, but he's just using any deflection tactic to try and get away from any scrutiny.
To go back to Andrew R.T. Davies, he used a good little trigger. He said to Drakeford that Aneurin Bevan, of course the famous Welsh Labour politician, would be turning in his grave. that got him going, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And I thought, Labour do hold grudges, and they'll be gunning for Andrew R.T. now and the Welsh Conservatives. And the Welsh Conservatives only make up a small proportion, 16 of the 60 members in the Welsh Parliament. So they are very much outnumbered there. But it's good to see Andrew and the Welsh Conservatives really leaning into them and putting them under pressure here.
Yeah, and winding them up. Now, Mark Drakeford was, of course, or is one of Jeremy Corbyn's best friends, so I'll leave that hanging in the air. Make of that what you will. Great supporter of Corbyn. Is he a supporter of Welsh independence, Drakeford? I assume he is.
Mark Drakeford's very sympathetic to federalism and, I think, personally, independence in Wales. There's a big movement in Wales for independence. It is growing. In the late 1990s, independence statistics were around 9% of the population supported independence. Recent poll, 30%. The Westminster government are turning a real blind eye to Wales. They're not paying any attention to it. I raised this recently on the media again. All their attention's at Scotland and watching Nicola Sturgeon. But Wales are learning from Scotland. They know they'll never win an outright referendum. So what they'll do is continue to demand more and more devolved powers to Wales, and in 20, 30, 40 years they'll turn around to the Welsh public and say, we're pretty much independent now. Why don't we just do it? We control 80% of all the things that happen in Wales. The only things that aren't in Westminster may be foreign policy. Why don't we go independent?
So you would suggest that we're in the middle of a long-term project?
Absolutely. I think, devolution to an extent has given rise to nationalists. Nationalists used to be on the periphery of the political spectrum in Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales. But now they've got lots of public sector money at their disposal from when they win elections. So in Wales, Plaid Cymru and the SNP in Scotland have got a lot of money at their disposal. They're using it, they're planning, they're strategising, they're slowly chipping away at the UK framework until eventually they'll be in the right position to try and leave.
I wonder what they'll make of it when Nicola Sturgeon loses her independent referendum, which I suspect she might well do. Just quickly, Matthew, tell us about life in Wales now. What are the problems?
Wales is a very, very stagnant economy. I live in Cardiff myself, and it's a great city, but there are really big problems with a stagnant economy. There doesn't seem any drive from Welsh perspective to try and really stimulate that economy. That's a huge issue. The NHS is a massive problem. The education system, the standards have fallen since devolution. So all in all, Wales isn't being run very well at all. It's a very poor country in comparison to places to England, for example, and even fallen behind Scotland quite heavily on the weekly average earnings since devolution began. So there are significant problems, but it has got a lot of positives to the country. Big tourism sector, strong farming sector, but it needs to diversify and move forward, I think, and I think it needs to try and attract some big global firms to come there, really bring some good jobs there, because at the moment we're having a big brain drain to England.
Well, as we were just saying, I mean, Drakeford has got sort of total power there, so leaders with total power ought to be able to be effective. Why has he been so ineffective in turning Wales into a fine and prosperous country?
Well, he's a socialist, isn't he? They don't really have any ideas when it comes to economics.
That's it, is it? What else? What kind of a person is he? I mean, we saw petulant.
Yeah, well, he seems to have a bit of a temper on him, doesn't he? I mean, I've only ever really seen him in second, third gear. He sort of plods around the Welsh Parliament with his head down, looking at his feet half the time. But he's clearly a very intelligent man. He's a very academic man, and he does rule Wales very firmly. But we'll see.
Not very well, though. Not very well.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming in, Matthew.
No
That was
worries.
really interesting. Matthew MacKinnon, he's a Welsh political consultant and commentator. We've got final sizzling 60 minutes still to come. When we come back after the news, we'll be looking at pensioners. The triple lock seems to be still in place now, but what is in store for our OAPs? That next. Stick with me. I'm Kevin O'Sullivan. This is Talk TV, coming at you live from the Talk Radio studios.